Hi, I'm Vin Diesel, and I'm gonna break down some iconic scenes from the Fast and Furious franchise. Well, first of all, it's one of the standout scenes that did a lot to start to build up the characters in the franchise. It was a very exciting time. There were a lot of people on set that were real streetcar racers that actually months earlier, when Paul and I were doing research for our character, we actually went on illegal streetcar races that were very much like that. And we actually ran from helicopters at that time. So there was a energy about that moment to see all of these racers, to see all of these authentic and original cars there, to the excitement of getting on the front line before we took off and started racing. Because so much of it was filmed practical, we were really driving along that street and thinking, hoping that our car didn't veer off and hit anybody.
What are you smiling about?
Dude, I almost had you.
You almost had me? You never had me. You never had your car.
Working on the first film with him was incredible. The first time I had met him, we were doing research for our characters. And that's where we kind of built our bond. I had just come from directing independent film, so he was always very curious of what I thought of every one of his lines. So whenever he had a line, he'd come over to me and say, well, what do you think, Dom? What do you think, Ben? What do you think? He took a lot of pride in that Dom-Brian relationship. That meant a lot to him, as it obviously meant to me.
Ask any racer, any real racer. It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
It was the beginning of this complex journey that, you know, in Fast and 4, we were estranged and we were going to kind of have to settle our differences and realize that we were brothers. That scene was wonderful because it was representing the Dominican Republic, which is where Dom has been for so long. But it also did something else, which was it highlighted a brother that nobody met in the first one, which was Han. You only realize where the escapades and the heights that they've been doing in Central America and South America only once you see Fast 4. So I think that brotherhood was important to spotlight, especially when you jump cut to Fast 9, when you're dealing with a theme that surrounds a broken brotherhood. To counter that in Fast 9, to counter that storytelling, you needed to anchor that with another brotherhood that's been pure and consistent, and that's the Han brotherhood. I had decided not to do the second one, and in part it was because I had said to the studio that they should never make a sequel to this, because if you make a sequel, you'll lose the possibility of this film being a classic. As you know, in the 90s and the 80s, if you sequelize something, you were destined to bastardize it. And so that was always my fear. And then they had approached me about doing a cameo, which I couldn't believe because I thought it was very clear that I had moved on. And I have a childhood buddy of mine named Valentino Morales who said to me, Dom Toretto doesn't belong to you, Vin. He belongs to the world. I went, what? I mean, huh? That's not how you're supposed to pick roles that you play. But I remember it being very poignant, and I remember that sentiment being hitting me like a ton of bricks. And the studio said, we want you to produce, otherwise we're not going to make another Fast. And I said, if we approach each sequel like the next chapter and we evolve our characters like you would in episodic storytelling, then I will produce it and return as Dom Toretto. That was such a great sequence. Any scene that I have with Pablo is priceless. Is a gift beyond words. And when it's a scene that is that incredible, it's even more of a gem. I remember being dropped into this lake or something, and I remember him and I having to hold ourselves underwater for some reason, for some long reason. That didn't make sense to me back then, but it was a camera angle for the camera shots. So we're actually having to become Navy SEALs for this shot. And then I remember we had all our clothes on, so they had a little jacuzzi. And I remember him and I in the jacuzzi with all our clothes on, trying to warm up so we didn't die from hypothermia. And I remember us laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing. It was one of those scenes that what I take away from it was the laughter and the joy that we had, because we felt like two kids doing the impossible.
Toast. Toast. Money will come and go. We know that. But the most important thing in life will always be the people in this room. Right here. Right now. Salute, mi familia. Salute. Salute.
It's introduced in the first one, right? That's what was so interesting about this character. I'm playing this outlaw, this tough guy, who forces Jesse to say prayer at a backyard barbecue. And although he's not articulating family yet, he's treating the group of misfits like a family. But it was cemented in Fast 5. That's where the idea of family really, really hit home. After Fast 4, when Brian is discouraged by the verdict by the judge and decides to take matters into his own hands and decides to go on the run with his brother as opposed to allowing his family to be broken. So Fast 5 was when we started to be bold about this theme of family and realized that it was something worth spotlighting. You know, the idea that we had this multicultural family, the idea that it didn't matter where you came from, what your race or religion or gender was. If you were at that table, you were family. And that's something that the audience has come to expect and appreciate. The audience for Fast and Furious always feels like they belong on the screen with the rest of us.
Done. Cars don't fly. Cars don't fly.
It is one of the most iconic scenes, and it's profound how we were able to share that scene together. It was a kind of a culmination of both our character trajectory. The thing I remember the most is the wondrous and beautiful moments of filming that with my brother Pablo that I'll never forget for the rest of my life.
Hey, thought you could leave without saying goodbye.
I used to say I lived my life a quarter mile at a time. And I think that's why we were brothers.
If you see the scene, you can see that I'm crying before the take and after the take. You could see, you can tell when somebody's been through it, and you can tell when somebody's eyes are trying to hold it together. And that's what that was. That was maybe one of the hardest scenes I've ever filmed in my life, because it was so hard to remain Dom in a scene where he's just saying goodbye to his brother on film for a second. You don't know, you know he's in the universe and you know you're gonna see him again. But that in conjunction with the realism, with the reality that I would never be able to see Paul Walker again, was devastating.
It's never goodbye.
Where's the bridge? No, Dom. Well, that was new.
F9 is what we've always envisioned as the beginning of the finale. So the stakes are higher. We are uncovering characters you never knew existed in the mythology. And all the characters are beginning to fulfill their character arcs. There's something very cool about it. The cooler thing is that this character that we met 2 decades ago is still here, is still present, but now he's a father. Not just to see that happen over 2 films, but to see that happen over 2 decades is really something unique and really something that the fans gravitate towards because they know that these characters are evolving. It's so, almost like, unlike any other movie, we've been lucky enough to have films that when the movie ends, you always walk out of the theater saying, what will happen next? It's the only franchise I've ever heard of that people walk out of the theater and stop by the ticket booth and say, can I have the ticket for the next one?
Yes!
I spent my entire life in your shadow. And now, you spend the rest of yours living in mine.
We going wild. We on the loose.
Not today.
We out the